Hey team, happy Wednesday. Excited to be back doing an update this week, restoring as much normalcy as possible after our IT outage, and we are still recovering from it. It's just good to kind of try and get back to normal. So I hope you guys remember the protocol here. Watch the headline update, which is this one. Watch your department update, which would be either from Danielle, Charlie, Eileen, or Dr. Patrick, depending on who your department leader is. And make sure that you head on to Humanity and complete that training. The deadline for everybody is Sunday. So make sure that you have those done so we can start fresh Monday. It just seems like information's really only good for that long, and I think you'll see why as you follow this update. So a couple like little normal strokes to make. One is a team member update. Alexia, who's been with us at the resort for a good while now, she is going a different direction and moving on. Her last day will be December 13th. I just wanted to let everybody know that. So we will be hiring to replace her at the resort. The next thing that I wanted to update was to kind of give you guys a little scope of an IT update. This has been really hard to do, and I hope you understand why, because it seems like things are evolving and changing pretty frequently. What we've been trying to do is post updates in Slack. I understand that that can be hard because it kind of gets mixed in with any other non-IT related information in Slack. So one thing that we want to do is, starting today, I'm going to go ahead and set up a Slack channel for IT. So it'll just be IT updates in Slack, and I want to invite everybody to that channel. So make sure you subscribe. That's going to kind of continue to be the trend, is we will get our abilities, let's call them our abilities in AVImark, back piece by piece. That also goes for other functions on our network, like the chat feature that we use. We'll get that back. We'll get the ability to attach and print records back, and all these things individually. So I'm going to create a Slack channel where we can put little like process changes, how we function as a group of humans interacting with our information technology system. But I'm also going to make a document that's going to live in that channel, and it's going to kind of be a fluid list, like 2 columns, things that you can do in AVImark and things that you cannot do in AVImark. That way, as we regain abilities, we can move the things from the cannot column into the can column so that you know exactly what to do. That'll be something that we'll get in place by tomorrow, Thursday. After that, we're really just waiting on emptying out that cannot column and getting back functioning. And as soon as we get the go-ahead from the NVA IT team that they say, hey, we should be done with our part of the process, you can begin back entry. As soon as they give us that go-ahead, we will resume back entry. We did some back entry last week of some retail and resort transactions, but we haven't been able to put together medical history for patients anymore. What we've done today are the files that we printed that we know we lost between October 23rd and November 5th. We've made folders for the patients who had medical history created on those days, but we did not recreate retail or resort transactions for those yet. So we've made folders, and then once again we get that go ahead, I will probably lead the charge on pulling in just a select few people at a time to help recreate those things. The process that we're going to follow as we imagine it right now is we're just going to enter the medical history line items or charges and rebuild invoices, and we're going to scan anything else that we did that we have a paper chart for. So those would be like medical notes, attachments, that kind of thing. And then after we finish that, we're going to go back and we're going to transfer blood work and make sure that we scan the results also. And then we're going to enter lab results from the lab book. So we really have that all spelt out exactly how to do that. I can't stress enough that we do not want anybody to jump in and help without specifically being asked and doing it day by day. So that's really important. I want to make sure that you all understand the why behind this too. is because right now we're not wanting to rebuild medical history, mostly because we're at risk of losing it again. So it would just be a waste of everybody's time and additional stress that we don't need to take on right now. When that time comes, even though, we'll invite you by day. So I might say, I'm pulling 2 team members today. These are exactly who, and I'm going to pull you into a specific room, and we'll have a specific process to follow for re-entering them, to where we make sure that we're not doing too much, but we're also not missing anything as far as recreation goes, because there's a lot of little legal components that we have to make sure that we re-represent, and there's other things that we don't necessarily need to do, but that would have been normal. So I can't stress enough, please don't go rogue on us or make your own rules or go off on your own. Really important that we do this uniformly and precisely as directed by NVA. The other thing that I wanted to share, again, is speaking of the why and why are we doing this the way that we are right now. Because we're at risk of losing things means we don't necessarily want to go back and recreate. But sometimes there might be a need to. As an example, I heard of a pet owner who came in yesterday on Tuesday, and they had a pre-invoice. They had a copy of a pre-invoice that they left with from their visit weeks prior. We didn't have a chart for them, which means that somehow those papers had been misplaced. And so it's important to go back and try and recreate what we did off of that client's copy of their pre-invoice. So that would be the exception to the rule. If you have questions about that, or if you're not sure if that's a similar situation to the one that maybe you face in the future, just make sure to ask. You can contact the manager on call if there's no one else around to help you through that. Just make sure that you ask those questions. But that's an example of something that we would maybe want to recreate in that moment, because even if we're at risk at losing it, we had already lost it. So we have to make sure that we do so decently. Okay, so make sure that you subscribe to that Slack channel. Make sure you read the document once we post it there. I'll probably make a post in general too, just to kind of point you in that right direction. All right, moving on. Wanted to make sure that everybody understands that this is a real problem that we're facing right now. Volume in the pharmacy has been an issue. In the past, it was an issue about context, like the types of conversations that we were having that maybe weren't even work appropriate, let alone client ear appropriate. That issue may still be continuing, but the fact that clients can hear us from the pharmacy area into the exam rooms is a problem in itself, because any little thing is distracting. I think we have to really own that our practice has evolved a lot over the last few years. We tend to be having more serious cases. We tend to be having euthanasias more frequently, and just having really complex conversations with clients that anything is a distraction to. So I'm going to call it volume as well as context as the issue, volume being the primary issue. We might be delivering bad news or having a critical conversation with a client, and even if you're talking about a work-related thing with a patient or another patient, it's an issue. And sometimes clients will take things out of context and they'll misunderstand what we're talking about. So we might be talking about their pet in a completely appropriate way, but they've misunderstood it, and it just makes the battle that much harder. So please don't even talk in the pharmacy. There's just not a need to talk. And if you have to say something, just talk at a whisper. So the types of things that you could whisper about would be filling a prescription medication, results for a cytology that you're doing, or just quick direction on which patient's in which room. Anything else, any other history to give to a doctor or question for a doctor, that conversation needs to be moved back into the treatment room, which also needs to be had not across the room, but face to face, just within kind of the minimum distance for appropriate discussion, right? So I'm saying overall, we need to control our volume, and we need to make sure that we have these conversations in appropriate places, not in the pharmacy. It's important. This is the rule going forward, so kind of everybody's getting a first warning at this point that we all collectively need to do better. There's no name to call out here. There's no one example that I have in mind that this is stemming from. It's just been a growing problem, and it's a new reality that we're facing. So I'm really asking everybody to get on board with this at this moment. You will be held accountable for it in the future. So just make sure that you understand this and that you change your habit from this point going forward. Okay, great. So moving on to the next thing, another problem that we're facing right now is we've had some serious increases in wait times for clients who are coming to pick up their pet. So they're waiting on us to discharge their pets to them. There's no ideal time in the day to get clients to come to pick up a pet from being hospitalized or from surgery or so on. We don't have a discharge nurse specifically each day. Maybe that's something that we'll work up towards, but we're not busy enough to have one. And we're kind of too busy to have one person dedicated anyways. So the responsibility for this is that it's the appointment team's responsibility. And then it trickles down to the treatment room nurse. But ultimately, if a client's left waiting for any period of time, probably more than 4 to 5 minutes as a very maximum, anyone is responsible for discharging that client. We've experienced a lot of problems, and I think it's just been because everybody's accountable that no one is accountable. But we hear a lot of not it's when it comes to discharging, like that's not my responsibility. I don't know anything about that patient. I'm at lunch. I've got XYZ to do right now. Well, that's not helpful. So really, everybody's kind of got to get off their high horse and do this at this point. What's funny about that is, from my nurses, when I hear that, who actually ends up discharging the patient and answering the most questions sometimes is the customer care team member, who knows the least about a patient and is probably the least available, but has to do it because ultimately the client thinks it's their responsibility and they're judged the hardest on it. When in fact, I think it's the nurse's responsibility. So that's why I'm saying it's the appointment team, because that happens in your domain. It's your responsibility to discharge. If there's a specific nurse listed and they're not available, it goes to the team, and then it goes to the treatment room nurse, and then ultimately it goes to whoever's first available to discharge that patient. I need to make sure that you all understand too that you don't have to know everything about the patient. You have to review the discharge form, and if the client asks a question, you have to be able to use your common sense to answer it. So if they say, when do I start giving this medication again? Use your resources and figure it out and tell them. If they ask you a question about the patient's healing or their progress or a what if this happens question, you can say, hey, that's a really good question. Let me confirm that I know the right thing. And then you go find it. And the client's not upset that you've gone to find it. They're happy that you're helping them, and it's better than keeping them waiting. It's better in every way, and it's the same thing that you would have faced on the front end if they came in with their pet with the problem initially and they said, what's wrong? And you would say, I'm not sure. I want to get somebody to help me confirm what's going on with them. Give me a minute. Let me go get a doctor. Let me go ask somebody. This is our whole process, so please don't overthink it. I don't want to see a client waiting in an exam room for more than 5 minutes for anything. So Danielle has ordered some timers to put on the exam room doors so that when you put a client in the room, or I guess it'll clip on the little folder bin that's outside the room. But when you put a client in that room, that timer is going to go off after 5 minutes. And somebody has to go in there. The person who turned the timer off has to go in. It is critical. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on the phone in the break room. It continues to be put on Do Not Disturb, and we need to put that phone on. I don't want to disrupt anybody's breaks, But I feel really strongly that everybody wants to know when there is somebody waiting, or if there's a way that they can help. And at least you could throw in your 2 cents over a detail, or be paged, or be alerted to an issue. So I feel like that's part of a solution too, is to make sure that those people are available. Ultimately, I'm saying this to the whole team because it's a whole team thing. I know that I'll do this going forward, and I'm asking you all to agree to this too. If you have an interaction with any team member who would have been responsible, based on what I just described, for a discharge or for giving a client information, and they said that they didn't want to do it because they didn't know about the patient, or they weren't available, or whatever, and it was their job, I want you to report that to Danielle, because she will be able to take care of it from there. This is everyone's job, but primarily it goes in the order of what we just described: appointment team, treatment room team, and then anyone else. And so we shouldn't be struggling from this point on to find someone to discharge a patient. Everyone should understand that, and understand that they're capable. Okay, the last thing I have is, we're still having questions about Old South Veterinary Services prescription requests that come in. And I wanted to make sure everyone understood that some of the clients who were clients of Old South Veterinary Service were also clients of LVCC. We also have their records. So depending on what prescription that they're requesting, let's say that they're requesting a refill of heartworm preventative. If we've seen their pet before, and we have on record that they're current on a heartworm test in the Old South Veterinary Services files that we got, they can have their heartworm prevention. If they're not current on a heartworm test, or if they have not been seen by us, they have to be seen again. If it's for another prescription, then they have to be seen. And so for either one of those cases where they have to be seen, we are offering to see their pet for the first time at the expense of the nurse's visit. So the nurse's visit cost instead of the full-on office visit. Sometimes clients need a prescription to be filled to get them until they can have that appointment. And so we can do that. We can give them up to a 7-day supply of what they need, or if it's heartworm prevention, you can give them 1 month. They can come in to the office and pick that up just so they can get by to get what they need. What we're not doing is we're not clicking refill on the request that comes from the Old South Veterinary Service online request, because that's not our pharmacy and we don't get that money. And if the client has concerns, they haven't actually paid for those things. Their card is not charged until the item is shipped, and the item doesn't ship until we approve it, and we're not approving those things. On case by case, we're calling them. So it might look like this. The client might send the request, the email comes to our email, and then what we're supposed to do is we pick up the phone and we call and we explain the situation. And we say, hey, we looked at your records, you need a heartworm test, or you need to come in, and we want to schedule the appointment. We can get you this to tide you over. Or we would say, hey, we need to see your pet, and we would get them scheduled. Or maybe we would say, hey, we can fill that. We're just going to fill it from our online pharmacy instead of this old online pharmacy. We're going to help you move it over. So this is very primarily directed at the call center, but sometimes these things trickle down the line. So I wanted everybody to know. For complete clarity, I'll put that in writing in an SOP as well, just to make sure everyone has their hands on it. But that's how it goes for right now. The last 2 things that I wanted to share really quickly, actually, I want to make sure I've said this many times, but I don't think it's really sinking in. Please do not text the manager on call. There's no way that we can keep up with that many texts in a day and making sure that what you're asking for or what you're needing has been confirmed. So I'm afraid that if you send a text that you'll assume that it was okay or that you've done your part. No, you have to call and get that verbal validation and exchange of what's going on. I get that sometimes it's hard We're not asking you to find your own replacement in most cases. We're just asking for you to explain what's going on, validate that you're not going to be here, or maybe that you're going to be late, or whatever the situation is, and go from there. So please stop texting the managers on call. It's really important. They may enter into like a text exchange with you where they hang up and they say, hey, okay, I'm going to do my part, and then I'll text you to let you know it's taken care of, or if I need more information. That's fine, because you've validated in the front end that they know to expect that from you. Just make sure that you're on board with that. Last thing, really, really fun. It's our Christmas party this weekend at the zoo. Please make sure that you've RSVP'd and kind of read the description. Saturday's party is from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. We have a hard stop at 10 because they close and they don't want to lock you up with the tigers and stuff. So 6 to 10, get there when you can. The main point of the itinerary is at 8 o'clock, we're going to kind of stop the party and have some serious moments because we have a Team Member of the Year announcement to make. And we have gifts and that kind of thing to take care of. So 8 o'clock sharp, we're going to be starting that. So I know some of you kind of trickle out of work, or it may take you a little time to get to the zoo. You got to make sure I would be there by 7:45, be in the door, so that you make sure that you've got place, because right at 8 o'clock we're going to start. And then on Saturday morning, we are going to have our kind of second Christmas party. If you want to double dip and come to both parties, that's awesome. You just need to make sure that you've RSVP'd. Second Christmas party starts at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday, and I think that's going to be a blast also. Can't wait to see you guys there and see you with your significant other and then maybe your family on Saturday morning. Thanks for all you do. We're making it, and we're doing great stuff. Take care, y'all.